Okay, so now that you've listened to some bossa nova and learned a bit about the background and the history of this style, let's talk about how to play some of the most common grooves used in the bossa nova. Okay, as I mentioned earlier on that Stan Getz Gilberto Gil record from 1964, the drummer was a man named Milton Banana, who was a really great drummer. And, you know, most people approach the bossa nova today with sticks, but in fact, he plays a lot of brushes on that particular record. And you don't really hear the cross-stick rim, which we associate with the bossa in the modern style. We hear the rhythms and accents in there, mostly on the hi-hat, with just one brush. And very, very quiet on the bass drum. It's almost like a percussionist approach to playing the kit, which I really like, because as I said earlier, the style is very delicate and very quiet, and you know, just it's kind of chill, like you're on a beach just listening to this guitar player and a guy singing. So you don't want to get in the way of that. You want to really support the voice and support the guitar. So a lot of the times he's playing accents on the hi-hat that follow the rhythmic vocabulary that is being played on the guitar and the piano by Jobim and Gilberto when they're doing their thing. So that really can just sound like this, so real simple. And then I'll get into the grooves that you have written down that come with the course. But just as an example, I just want to point out that with anything, there's always options and variations. You can't, it's not just you're locked into, this is one pattern and I learn it and that's it. No, the patterns are merely the starting point. Because if we didn't vary them, then nothing would ever change. And we want creative people to do that, create something and change things. And that's how the genres change over, you know, each generation. So with Milton's style, it was something very simple, just like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go. Really quiet, really tasty. Now, when I was younger, I probably thought, that's kind of boring. But as I've matured, sort of, I would say that I can appreciate the beauty of that and why it works. I understand that it works with the music because it doesn't get in the way, creates a rhythmic bed, and it's also functioning kind of like a percussion instrument. Now, one of the things I like to do with the bossa is to just take the one brush. I'll show you a little trick that I like. And remember I said that João Gilberto took the tambourine pattern. The tambourine is like a little 6-inch mini tambourine without jingles that they'd play with a 3-pronged dowel, and they'd play it and flip it. You may have seen it. If not, just look up tambourine with an M at the end. And you'll see guys playing this kind of thing with this little tiny percussion instrument. So I like to play the brush. I put it in like this, and then I put it on the snare drum, and I take the snares off and try and almost simulate that sound of the tambourine like this. So you'll see my left hand here is filling in the gaps, and I might play one of the rhythms that you might see on the rhythm here on the page, and I would just play it like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see the thing that's different there is it's a different rhythm, obviously, but the sound. That gives me options with texture. One of the other things I'll just point out that I'll be using with the play-along a little bit later is this great instrument that I got from Headhunters. And because there may be some young kids watching, the name is a little bit on the ruder side, so I'll just call these FBs. Okay, but the sound is great because it simulates almost like a maraca sound or a shaker sound. And I might sometimes play it on the hi-hat or on the rim. Or the cymbal. And so the sound creates a vibe and really helps kind of work within the musical style. So those are just a couple of things I want to point out, that for options, you can play with the brushes, You can move the sound around, experiment it. Once you learn the rhythms, experiment with the sound. It's a more advanced concept, but I want to just sort of plant the seed now that you think, okay, once I learn the pattern, I have it. No. Once you have learned the pattern, that's just the starting. That's just the beginning part. That means you can start to be freer by playing the music, and you can experiment and create beautiful sounds and beautiful rhythms. Okay, so let's look at example 1 on your page. So this groove is pretty much one of the most standard bossa grooves out there that everybody knows. You're going to play with the right hand on the hi-hat, if you're a right-handed player, of course. Obviously, if you're left-handed or play open hand, then that's a little bit different. But for now, I'm a right-handed player. I'll just do everything the way I'm used to doing it. You got your bass drum pattern, kind of recreating a surdo pattern. A surdo is a big Brazilian drum that you might hear. Something like that. The hand, right hand on the hi-hat is recreating like a shaker part, and then I was going to say the bossa clave, but I mean the clave is not the terminology that's used normally in Brazilian music. The clave is something that's more associated with Afro-Cuban music. So I'm going to stay away from that and just say the cross-stick rim shot, all right? So here we are trying to, again create that delicateness, that intimacy of the sound of the bossa nova. So by playing quiet, you don't want to get too loud and bashy, and you don't want to be hammering on the kit. So keeping everything light, keeping the sticks close to the surface. So when I'm playing the hi-hat, 1, 2, 3, 4. So a couple of things about that. As I said, nice and quiet on the hi-hat. You have 2 options. You can use the tip sound or what we call the shank sound. It's a little bit thicker sound, so you have the option. Gives you 2 different sounds. One thing I want to point out is that I prefer to play it the way I was taught, which is with the butt end of the stick. I mean, I know a lot of young players like to use the thin sound, but let me show you something that happens with the difference in the sounds. If I use this sound, I get this end of the stick, I get this kind of sound. When I use the butt end, I get this sound. Which to me is a nice sound. It cuts better through when you're playing, and it helps balance out the sound of the kit. You have the option of moving the stick up and down around the snare so you can get a lower tone. This is all based on the placement of the stick on the rim. So if I played here, I get one sound. If I play here, about a quarter of the way down the stick, I kind of get that optimal sound. So that's what you're looking for. Like if you were to divide the stick into 4 sections, 3/4 of the way up or 1/4 of the way in, you're looking for the optimal sound. One thing I want to point out that is also very important is that when I hit the stick on the rim, click, I hit it like this. So if you can, and I come off. The same way you would come off on a head. I don't bury my stick into it like that. So when I'm playing the cross stick, I'm not doing that. I'm doing that because I want the sound to be open. So I don't want to choke the sound. So when I hit the cross stick rim, I'm looking for that sound. So something to experiment with and to be aware of is the crucial, the importance of what that rim click sound is, all right? So putting it together, depending on your level of coordination, this would be one of the more simpler grooves to play, or if you're just a beginner and you're starting off, it can be a little bit challenged between the hands and the feet. So here's demo number 1. And I'll just play this in the air and go through a little bit about it. For me, when I'm playing the bossa, I look at all the limbs as a rhythmic cell. and I want to put all those together and make sure that it's smooth. So I start with one thing at a time, and then I add another one. So if I'm starting here with the eighth notes on the hi-hat, it's going to be like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Add the bass drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I work on the polyrhythmic activity of the cross stick on the snare. 1, 2, 3, and. Be sure when you're playing this groove that you don't flam anywhere. So you don't want the hands out of sync, and you don't want the hands and the feet out of sync. So you always want to be sure that you lock up the bass drum and the hi-hat together. So sometimes I will break it up and just play the hands or the hands and feet. So right now, here's the slow demo with the click at 80 BPM. 80 beats per minute. Here we go. 2, 3, 4. And one thing I want to point out is when you're playing with the click, try and imagine that it's a part of the rhythmic spectrum of what you're playing. It's not an outside element. Try and think of it as part of the groove itself and lock up and line up with that. And that should help it sort of stay a little bit steadier, okay? So here is another demo with the click a little bit faster. This one is at 120 BPM. So check this out. 2, and 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, now for fun, let's try this one with the demo with a loop so that you can get a practical application of playing the pattern in a musical setting. Okay, so Bossa Nova number 2. Let's look at the example here on the page. If you notice looking at it, it looks very similar to the first one. All we've done is taking the second bar from the first groove and put it first. So now it's kind of reversed. The pattern is reversed. We're seeing bar 2 first and then bar 1 second. This happens a lot in Brazilian music. You will hear that 2-bar pattern repeated, and you're always sort of going with the rhythmic vocabulary of, say, the piano player or the guitar player. So you have to know by listening which groove to use. So it's like this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now here's a slow demo with the click at 80 BPM again. 3, 4. Now let's take it up again to 120 BPM. Pattern 2. 1, 2, 3. And moving along, again in the musical setting, here is the demo with the loop. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so for example number 3, we're going to introduce to the 3 limbs that are already working, we're going to invite our left leg to join the party. We don't want it to be the designated driver. We want this sucker to be involved here. All right, so I'm going to move my right hand from the hi-hat up to the ride cymbal, and then what happens, I get this kind of pendulum effect with my feet, like this, when I'm playing the bossa or samba, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so here's bossa number 3 with the click track at 80 BPM. 3, 4. Now let's try that groove at 120 BPM. 1, 2, 3. And now using that same groove as a way to play along with the play along. 2. Now, for bossa number 4, if you notice looking at the page, this becomes more or less the same pattern that we've been working with, except that it becomes a 1-bar pattern with the left hand just playing the 1-bar static pattern, which is this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so here we go, bossa number 4 with the ride cymbal and the hi-hat and the 1-bar pattern with the rim click. Okay, here we go at 80 BPM. 3, 4. And bossa number 4, once again at 120 BPM. And 1, 2, 3. All right, here comes bossa number 4 with the musical loop. 2, 1, 2. So as an exercise, sometimes we like to throw in some toms into various grooves. This is not a groove that I would play that often, but it is a nice exercise in just learning to move your hand, your left hand or your right hand around the kit within playing the bossa groove. Okay, so here we have number 5. And again, one of the things I want to point out is when you're moving from the cross stick, be aware that lateral movements are a little bit trickier, trying to go from here to here, and it makes an awkward movement, and a lot of drummers, young players especially, try to make fast movements, which is not always conducive to a nice flow, a nice relaxed sensation. So the way I do it is it's like my wrist comes up and pulls here, almost like the molar thing, right, that people talk about. This comes up, and my hand is actually situated above the tom when I come down. So when I want to come up, makes it a little bit easier. So you'll notice that motion real subtly in getting from one place to the next around the kit. I just wanted to point that out. So as I said, we're going to introduce some toms in the middle of this bossa groove while playing with the ride cymbal and keeping the hi-hat on 2 and 4. Here we go. So I'll build it up again. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's try that example with the click at 80 BPM. 3, 4. And now the same thing at 120 BPM. 2, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's try that same groove with the loop. 2, 1, 2. Now, one of my favorite things to do is to get a regular groove, and instead of adding more things to it, is to take things away. 'Cause sometimes incorporating space into grooves can be quite a challenge for especially drummers. because we rely on all the syncopations to be played. So for this bossa groove, you'll notice the bass drum is a little bit less. So there's going to be a lot more space on the bottom end of this groove, and it's going to leave a lot more room for, say, the bass player to play. So check this out. Same pattern as we've been playing, but just less bass drum. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and. Okay, let's do that same groove now at 80 BPM. And 3, oh. And now the same groove at 120. 1, 2, 3, and. All right, let's give that one a go for the loop and see how this one turns out. 2, 1, 2. Okay, hopefully that was fun. Your assignment for this lesson is to practice all 6 of these bossa nova grooves, then practice them slowly with a metronome at first. I can't stress how important that is. Then try playing along with the loops once you're confident with each example. And it's also important to understand how each rhythmic layer fits together within each groove. This is something you're going to be seeing more often when we move into more Afro-Cuban and Brazilian styles throughout the method. So have fun with these, and once you complete your assignment, you can move on to the next lesson.